Sue Schrobak. Sue Schrobak home.
What is home to you? Is it when you cozy up in your cuddly warm robe, you drink your favorite cup of coffee, turn on that TV, and just be? Fellow Toastmasters and friends, I will take you today on my journey, finding my home. I was born and raised in Switzerland, but I have a little secret. My nationality was of a country that today no longer exists. In the early 70s, my parents had to flee their home in Czechoslovakia due to the foreign invasion. Their heart and mind stayed frozen in those early 70s, always carrying the hope that one day they will be reunited with their parents, my grandparents, Josephine and Anton. But for me, as a child of the 80s, home was Switzerland. And I embraced everything the 80s had to offer. I had short hair, and it's a martial art, just like Karate Kid. And I was wearing those white hip-hop pants, just like MC Hammer. Can't touch this. But my parents, on the other hand, just didn't understand that. So each time I got home from school and I opened that door, my dad would start screaming at me. Sue, you must become a girl. Beautiful long hair. Stop martial arts. Start wearing skirts. That didn't feel like home to me. How is or was that for you? Did you ever feel like not belonging? Just like nobody understands you? That's at least how I felt. Until November of 1989. I'm coming home from school, ready to be screamed at. But wait, are these my parents? They are happy. My dad looks at me and says, Sue, Sue, imagine, our country is free. We will go back and visit your grandparents. Yeah, right. Going to a country I have never been to? Meeting grandparents I never met? No. But the next thing I knew, I was sitting in that car on my way, thinking to myself, my parents have all these problems with my short hair, my martial arts, and those MC Hammer pants. What will my grandparents say? And the next thing I knew, we crossed the border. I saw a country left in neglect and destruction. Cars from the 50s and the 60s. People wearing old worn clothes. And that should be my home? No. Car kept driving and then stopped in front of an old barn house. I saw an old woman standing there with her headscarf to protect her ears against the cold weather. I hesitated, but I got out. And the next thing I knew, Grandma Josephine just hugged me and pulled me close to her. In that moment, all of my fear just fell away. I felt in my heart how much she loved me. She put her arm around me and said, Sue, Grandpa Anton is waiting for you. Let's go home. My grandpa was unfortunately very ill. But imagine, for me, he got up. He looks at me and says, Sue, welcome home. Those few days I was able to spend with them were the most magical days of my life. There was no questioning about my hair, about my martial arts. There was just pure love and understanding and acceptance for who I was. Something my own parents were never able to give to me. And a few days later, we returned back to Switzerland. And a few days later, the call came. Grandpa Anton had passed away. He was terminally ill. But he had a wish he held on to, and without his strength to hold on, and to meet his only granddaughter at least once in his life, I would never have understood what it means to be home. Because home is here in your heart and nowhere else. People will always try to push and pull you in different directions, tell you who to be, how to act, or even try to limit you. But once you understand that home is here in your heart, all of that outside noise will turn into a whisper and disappear. Is it time for you to welcome yourself back home? Always remember, home is here in your heart. Listen to your heart and never stray away, and you will always be at home. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster. Please join me in welcoming Joy Harris. It looks good on a resume, Joy Harris. Joy Harris, it looks good on a resume.
There we go. It looks good on a resume. Hello, everyone. I'm Joy Harris from Joy Can Help. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about what looks good on a resume to you as well as to a potential employer. So let's take a look at some resume tips that I have picked up. So we all know that a resume contains work experience. And work experience is the continuity that you have had about your work experience, the times that you've been there. I would like to recommend that you use the work experience section to make sure that you have bullet points that highlight the skills and the talents that the employer is looking for, that they are specifically looking for at the present time. So that might require you to change the resume a little bit for every job, every position for which you are applying, but that is what the employer is looking for, specific skills and talents. I also recommend a special skills section. And in this section, you have an opportunity to use some wording that helps the employer understand that you really are looking for just the right challenge and job satisfaction. So in my career as career coaching, I would like to present 3 case studies. The first one is a warehouse worker who was only looking for another warehouse job. However, the reason why he was looking is that there was no promise, there was no opportunity in being a warehouse worker. And once I reviewed his resume and saw that he went to drafting classes in high school and learned about reading blueprints, he said that when he went for a job interview, he used the drafting print style on his paper application, and the recruiter did not get him a warehouse job. He got him an entry-level job in an architectural firm because they learned that he had had drafting classes and was interested in bettering himself and having a job more than just a warehouse worker. The second candidate that worked with me was having experience in bookkeeping and accounting. And she was so tired of being heads down looking in the books that she wanted a job meeting people and actually interacting, even customer service, but meeting people. And she ended up landing a job with a large drugstore chain where she had to go out on the floor and meet with people. But they had recently had a lot of turnover and no one was able to be the shift supervisor. But because she was able to come in with record keeping experience, she wasn't being asked to be a bookkeeper or an accounting person, but because she was being hired in a new position, they made her the shift supervisor so that she would get a little bit of being out on the floor meeting with people, but having a variety of duties as well. The third job seeker was someone with a degree in biology, and they had also been out in the working world for 6 years, but they had never worked in their field. They had trouble finding something in their field. They would have never looked at a daycare center or a child learning academy. However, the position was at a child learning academy, and they were looking for someone with a degree. They simply wanted a college degree. And she also had on her resume that she had designed some coursework in the past. So she was able to, all of these were able to better themselves with their resume. Now, I can tell you that what all employees are looking for is for you to demonstrate a willingness to learn their methodology, their way of doing things, their product or service, and the way they like things done in their company. They're also looking for people who can be flexible. So your resume, again, that special skills section needs to highlight that you not only have the willingness to learn, you have the requirements of the skills and talents, but that you're willing to be flexible and work with them. So you know you need the specific talents, especially if it's something like a chef or heavy machinery operator or a graphic designer. But what I have found is that they are the complex combination of being a self-starter and able to work independently. And they also want you to be motivated to be a team member on the team where they place you. But what they're really looking for is a well-rounded individual that will fit in with the team and fit in with the organization. So I found that many employers will look at your special skills or even the last few sentences on your resume where you say whether you're married, whether you have children, you just wrap it up with a few personal comments. I have taken things away from my resume because I didn't want them to ask questions about things that were not relevant. But what is relevant are your courses or degrees, and certainly having your certificate as the leadership pathway, for example, in Toastmasters looks good on a resume. It also looks good on a resume for your achievements in your personal life, even your hobbies and other sports and things in which you've become involved, or any awards that you have achieved along the way. And your personal involvement with family, volunteer organizations, and clubs. So this is where Toastmasters comes in. If you have Toastmaster member on your resume, it looks good because it shows that you know how to be a participant and that you do focus on continuous improvement. So there's many opportunities within a Toastmasters club and within the Toastmasters district. So there are opportunities such as being vice president. We have vice presidents of membership, public relations, education, as well as having an officer role. And it gives you an opportunity to speak off the cuff, as well as preparing demonstrations. So I'd like to thank you for listening today to How to Have a Great Resume. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I'll be the general evaluator, and I'll be facilitating, for continuity purposes, the rest of the meeting, the evaluation portion of the meeting. So we're going to start off with the evaluations and of the prepared speech, and Joy, we'll start with you evaluating Sue's home speech. Turn it over to Joy.
Thank you. Thank you. It was pretty exciting to hear the speech today about home, because the words and the feeling behind the words were definitely there. We could feel the heart in getting to meet your grandparents and going to another country. And as it turns out, we found out that she met her grandfather right before he passed. So she really had an opportunity to feel home. And she also showed us that they hugged her right away. She was welcomed into the family. Excuse me, she was welcomed right away. So I enjoyed that quite a bit. She had a lot of enthusiasm in her speech, which I truly enjoy. And there was that personal touch of the closeness of her family. So while she described her parents as having the critical nature that a parent has when they're trying to put their children onto the best path, she had received some negative feedback, but not when she went on the trip seeing her grandparents. Those grandparents welcomed her for who she is and who she was, and they welcomed her with open arms, and that was a great sense of family. In fact, she referred to it as magical days. So we don't all get magical days, and we don't all get magical days with our parents or our grandparents. But she did find that on this trip that no one judged her, so she found a lot of acceptance. I don't have a lot of ways to critique this excellent speech, so it's not a negative, but I clearly saw the picture of her family and the hugs and the closeness of, you know, the heart in there. But being in a landlocked state, the only thing I know about Switzerland is the Alps and Heidi, maybe. So there was starting to be a little bit about the home, the physical home, but a little bit more about Switzerland, or that town might have opened that up just a little bit more. However, like I said, it was so impactful for her to see her grandpa, and she certainly represented that home is where the heart is and where people love and accept you. She used great gestures in her speech, and I think she was glad to be welcomed home by her relatives. So thank you, Sue, for such an inspiring speech about home.
Thank you, Joy. Fantastic. Let's move on to our second evaluator. That's going to be Sue evaluating Joy's speech. It looks good on a resume. Turn it over to you, Sue.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Joy, for this really valuable presentation you gave to us. I have the pleasure to evaluate your speech, and I was looking for things that I feel you've done really exceptionally well, which I like to point out, but I also found a few areas where I feel like, let's elevate your speech to the next level. It was good, but we always can improve. So what have you done really good? I loved your presentation. And I loved how you embedded yourself into the presentation and we're not just like a little part on the side. So we're able to enjoy you, your whole body language, your enthusiasm, and your personality. Your slides were easy to read. You had bullet points, and your case studies were phenomenal. And it literally opened my personal mind when you talked about the student who had the biological diploma but couldn't find a job, to go to childcare. Who would have thought that? And I literally like opened up my mind in a sense of like, where do I limit myself? Where I feel like, hey, with my background, I only fit into this niche. And that was, I believe, extremely valuable for us all. You obviously have a wealth of experience and you share that with us with tangible little great aspects and pointing out, not to give maybe too much, things you don't want to be asked about, but really be on point and make it about the job and showcase why you fit for the job and what can happen if you don't really put certain points in there. So that was a huge success, Joy. But what can you do now better? How can we get this speech to the next level? My ask to you is add a few you questions. That way you connect more with the audience. Like your introduction and opening is just like, let me talk today about the resume. I want to help you to get better, to write that resume. Is anybody in here looking for a job? When have you last time wrote your resume? Is it up to date? These kind of questions make me as an audience feel like, oh wait, you're talking literally to me, not just at me, but to me. And that way you draw them in and drop here and there. Always the little you questions. When you do your case studies, have you ever thought about applying for a childcare job when you have a biological diploma in biology? Like these kind of things will make us think and be even more connected. So we don't only listen, but we start thinking about it. And the next thing is, or the last thing is, your ending. Try to put something very motivational and inspirational in there. For example, with like writing the resume. So are you ready to write your resume? Take my tips and I promise you, you will find your dream job. Something like this, like a call to action, wrap it up a little bit, what you just presented to us. And that way you leave us like, wow, I'm inspired. Let me go and get that resume and update it immediately. These are just few little things and tweaks because you are a phenomenal speaker. So think about that, try to incorporate that, and I know you're going to do phenomenal. Thank you so much. And back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you. Great evaluation. Let's turn it over to our word all-counter grammarian. That is going to be Janet Castlin. Can you give us a report on the word of the day and any grammar usage?
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Tonight I'm to give the grammarian report, but first I want to welcome Elizabeth to our meeting. You didn't get a chance to say very much. How are you doing tonight, Elizabeth? Oh, you're on mute, Elizabeth.
She might be on her phone. I don't know if she can unmute.
Okay. All right. Anyway, it's exciting to see another member at our meeting. The word continuity was used 3 times by David Ash, once by Joy, and she also used the word continuous improvement, so I gave her half credit for that. And Jeff used continuity purposes, so he used the word of the day also. So thank you for using the word of the day. And let's see, I took notes going through the meeting with the different roles people had, and when Jeff was the table topic master, he just had a couple ahs. Oh no, when he was doing his table topic, he had a couple ahs. Joe had several ahs and one so, and I liked his word rick rack. Let's see, Joy, our Sue's speech. I'm looking down my notes. I do remember one time Sue, you were talking about, I think you meant granddaughter, but it sounded like grandfather. So when you say meeting the granddaughter, make sure you pronounce it very clearly for the audience. And in Joy's speech, she's just stumbled a little bit over the word skill. He had to repeat the word skill. I took a lot of notes of Joy's speech because those were very good case studies. And Joy's evaluation of Sue's speech, well, she pointed out that she said magical days. So thank you. That was for pointing that out. That's a good words to use. And you just had one double clutch. And Sue's evaluation of Joy's speech, she used the word niche, like fitty or niche, like fitty into the niche. I pronounced it correctly. And she just had a couple odds. So that concludes my grammarian report.
Thank you, Janet. Let's move on to the timer report. That's Veronica Sanford.
Great. Let's see how quickly I can get this done. I will say that Janet during table topics, 1 minute and 31 seconds. Jeff, 1 minute and 52 seconds. Joe, 2 minutes and 12 seconds, at which point the red flags were dancing. And I noted that both Joe, Jeff, and Janet all began with a J, which was continuity there for you. I was waiting for Joy, but I guess we ran out of time. The speech, Sue was 7 minutes and 11 seconds, still within time. Joy was 8 minutes and 10 seconds, which is which point I started beeping at the 8-minute mark. Joy during the evaluation period was 2 minutes and 57 seconds within time, and Sue was 3 minutes and 24 seconds, also within contest time. Thank you all very much. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Great, thank you, Madam Timer. Some overall comments about the meeting today. First of all, I think there are some kudos in order. We had Sue Schrobak was our guest today. As I mentioned, she was a division winner and also competed at the District 40 contest in both contests. Also wanted to welcome Betsy, who joined us a little bit late. And I want to congratulate David Ash for doing his first Toastmaster of the Day role. And then just the fact that we had 2 speakers, I think is also worth a little kudos. So fantastic. Our table topics, Dave Delahanty, I love the diversity of those topics. They were kind of all over the place. So you couldn't really predict what the next question was going to be. Janet, you did a great job with descriptive words, snow on the roof, light coming through the windows. My parents have a painting, a Kincaid painting. I think it's called Light is actually the name of the painting. So I could totally visualize what you were talking about. And Joe, going back in time to the 1950s and 60s, specifically the autumn was your favorite time. And I think there might be a genealogy speech coming up, if I heard correctly. So Joe, you are on the hook now for a genealogy speech. Now for our evaluators. Both of our evaluators gave really good feedback along with a little bit of constructive feedback. That was difficult, Joy, to give constructive feedback to somebody that just competed in the district contest. It's very difficult to do. But I thought you did a great job. You kind of nailed talking about her backstory and then contrasting the fact she didn't fit in, and then when she met her grandparents, she suddenly felt that acceptance. I think you really drew that home. One thing I think you started to touch on, and I just wanted to expand on it a little bit, that you could do, Sue, is also contrast the location. So even though you maybe didn't fit in Switzerland, contrast just the beauty of Switzerland, the Alps and so forth. I think as Joy was saying, with the place where you did fit in Czechoslovakia, which was neglected. You did talk about Czechoslovakia, but maybe a little bit more on the Switzerland side, which is what Joy suggested. All of us liked magical days. I like that as well, that phrase as well. And your enthusiasm, of course, always shines through. Sue, giving your evaluation to Joy. Again, you're a division champion in evaluation. So it was excellent. I also noted the case studies. I really liked. I love examples. They're kind of like miniature stories. So those were really excellent. The audience engagement, I thought that was great constructive feedback. Talk to me, not at me. And I'll finally mention Joy. My daughter is exactly in this situation. Just got her master's degree. It's a music degree, but she wants a business job. So some of the skills translate. You analyze music. You can apply that skill set to doing analysis in the business world, but very timely for me, at least for her. So thanks very much for letting me be the general evaluator. I will turn it back to our Toastmaster of the day, David Ash.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. So yes, I agree with all of the general evaluation. I do have to, as a Toastmaster, I do have to apologize a little bit for the one break in continuity during the meeting. I am dealing with a little bit of a plumbing maintenance matter. It's not an emergency, but the people who are dealing with it seem to be treating it as an emergency. They kept banging on the door, and I had to interrupt and ask them to kind of go away for a little while. I'm going to deal with it after the meeting. So sorry for that slight break in continuity. The only other thing I would like to add before I turn it back over to our club president is we do like to give everyone in the meeting a chance to talk at least once. And I think we may have missed Betsy, who I think is also our newest club member. And I believe someone may have tried to call on Betsy, but Betsy, I just want to try one more time. If you can hear me and you have any comments about the meeting, do you want to tell us what you think about the meeting? It's okay if not, or if you're busy or whatever, but just want to give you one last chance to talk, since we do like to give everyone a chance to talk. Well, okay, so feel free to ping us in the last few minutes if you do come back online. So with that, thank you for having me as a Toastmaster for the very first time in this club. And I think that pretty much wraps up my role as Toastmaster. So I'm going to turn it back over to our club president, Joy, who will give us any closing remarks and close the meeting.
Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone. I think this was pretty full participation today.